This CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS. Time to get your variety coins graded. The new PCGS quarterly grading special is in effect, and collectors can receive half-off variety attribution on up to 5 coins. Visit pcgs.com/cc special to find out more. This week on the CoinWeek Podcast, I talked to Klein and Shawn Smeallie from the Dollar Coin Alliance. Smeallie is the executive director of the organization and has a 30-year career working in Washington in various capacities, including as a special assistant to President Bush for legislative affairs from 1990 to 1993. He has worked with the Dollar Coin Alliance as executive director since 2011. Klein is a former chief economist for the Democrats on the Senate Banking Committee. In this capacity, Klein worked on a number of big legislative efforts, including Dodd-Frank and TARP during the Obama administration. For the next 30 minutes, we go beyond the soundbites and get to the heart of the matter. Is there a future for a dollar coin? Hi there, Aaron and Shawn. Thanks for joining me on the CoinWeek Podcast.
Great to be here. This is Shawn Smeallie.
Aaron Klein, pleasure to join.
It's interesting to me that over the course of the past 30 years or so, there's been a great deal of advocacy work on behalf of the concept of producing and circulating a dollar coin in the United States, and for various reasons, and not the least of which is the Fed's seeming hostility towards the concept. We just have not been able to get that done. Why is that? And what hope is there that something can be done about it?
This is Shawn Smeallie. I'm the executive director of the Dollar Coin Alliance. I think it's one, the Fed, as you rightly point out, but also I think it's really hard, and other nations have proven this. It's hard to have two versions of the same currency. Canada, as you well know, tried it with the loonie, and it was hard to make the transition with the toonie, the $2 Canadian coin. They went cold turkey, and it was a lot easier, and they saved a lot more money. So I think that the U.S., to be successful, and this is sort of done in the bill that was just introduced, you have to cut off one of the currencies. And in our Currency Optimization, Innovation, and National Savings Act, which was just introduced by Senators McCain and Enzi, it basically phases out the dollar bill in 2 years. So after 2 years, you won't have a choice.
I think another problem here is that the way the U.S. government accounts for profit and loss from the production of currency is globally unique in that coins are treated one way as being part of the Treasury Department and the Mint, and paper notes are treated a different way as being part of the Federal Reserve. And so leaders in Congress respond to incentives, and incentives are not, when people say, oh, we're going to reduce the national debt, the way Congress counts the national debt and what actually is the national debt and contributes to it are different things, and nowhere, from my experience, is that difference more stark than in how we produce currency. And so the failure to have moved to a dollar coin 30 years ago has increased the national debt by billions of dollars. But paradoxically, had we done that change 30 years ago, they wouldn't have been credited with having reduced the debt nearly as much as it has.
One of the things that I've done in my own life is I've experimented with actually using the dollar coin in commerce. A couple of years ago on an internet coin forum, I launched a thread called Project 100K, where I invited other coin collectors to join me in spending $100,000 in golden dollar coins. And I think we achieved this in about 1.5 years or 2 years. But I learned something in the process, and I learned it fairly early on. The thing I learned is that $1 does not have enough purchasing power to be a major standalone denomination of our money. $1, coin or paper currency, has become a change-making unit. So it seems to me that we have to start thinking beyond the $1 coin in order for a dollar coin to be successful. Do you agree with this observation?
I mean, I guess I'm not entirely sure what you mean. If you look at other countries, most other advanced economies have $1 and $2 coins.
Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you wanted to buy lunch. If you intended to use dollar coins as a method of payment, your typical casual dining lunch will cost you between 40% and 60% of a roll. I doubt that anybody would find it to be optimal to transact even simple things like buying lunch in coin. At the current circulating denominations, coins are essentially relegated to the purpose of making change. And I would not see that changing much if we finally turned the corner and got a dollar coin into circulation. Unless, of course, the dollar coin was just one of a tranche of new higher denomination coins that would be entering into service. I think at the present trajectory, given inflation, coinage is hurtling towards irrelevance.
So yeah, inflation erodes that. One of my favorite stats is that in 1976, a quarter was worth today what a dollar is. And you don't see anybody in 1976 that was in favor of creating a paper quarter. Right? I take a little bit so I think your point about that is right, and it underscores the need about why we need to modernize our currency. It's also why, at least in my report, I've called for suspending the continuation of production of the penny, because we keep producing billions of pennies a year that people don't seem to want. But let me kind of like paying for things. I think that the way that I would look at paying for lunch is, if lunch is $7, I pay not with $7 coins, but with a $5 bill and $2 coins. And, besides, maybe parking or doing your laundry, when you talk about a roll of quarters, nobody would try to buy lunch with a roll of quarters. But you get the quarters back and then you use them. I have to carry a roll of quarters when I go parking or do laundry. I could probably use only a couple of those dollar coins. So I think coins and paper, denominations of currencies have different value and merit where they are up on the scale. And a dollar coin would be very widely used. Demand for dollar bills is really high. I mean, nobody, takes stacks of dollar bills when they go out to purchase goods. But, we're continually producing more dollar bills every year because consumers are demanding them and using them.
You could probably make the same argument about dollar bills that people make about pennies. As a paper currency, dollar bills are cumbersome for their value. One wouldn't want a wallet filled to the brim with $1 bills.
Well, I mean, it's very different. A lot of studies have shown that the vast majority of pennies end up either thrown away or in jars in people's houses. I've seen a lot of families that have penny jars. I've never seen a family with a jar full of dollar bills. People tend to use those currencies kind of very differently because of the purchasing power, which is your salient point up front. And I agree with that. And in point of fact, coins can be a lot more convenient for things like vending machines, parking meters, transit fares, and as you point out, for change making. One of the big problems you have is for things that cost a little more money, like a $2 or $3 transit fare where people may not have exact change and they put in a $10 bill. These vending machines, transit agency machines, have to give tons and tons of quarters, which make it difficult for them to stock, which increase their costs. One of the interesting findings of my report was that transit agencies alone would save $8 to $9 million a year from their operating budget in switching to the dollar coin. So not just the taxpayer save and the government saves, but actually private businesses could save quite a bit as well.
If you go back before 1933, and this isn't an argument about gold being in coins or anything like that, but up to 1933, the United States produced a $2.50, a $5, a $10, and a $20 coin. The $10 coin was called an eagle, and the other coins were denominated off of that unit. When I think about the future of coins, I wonder if we should be lobbying for, in addition to a circulating dollar coin and the reemergence of the 50-cent coin, that we should also be lobbying for a circulation $2.50 coin and $5 coin, and relegate paper money to units of $10 and above.
Yeah, this is Shawn. I think you're right. I think if people get comfortable with the dollar coin, which we think they will, I think moving to the $2 coin and ultimately the $5 coin and those things is going to be easier down the road.
What input have you received from congressional members in regards to the various efforts the Dollar Coin Alliance has undertaken? And what do you think remain the primary challenges to getting Congress on board to undertake real monetary reform?
So I think the biggest obstacle with anything in Congress is inertia. I think once we sit down and explain it to them, most people are supportive, and I think, but it's never going to be their top, 4 agenda item. We are going to get a similar bill dropped into the House probably as early as next week, a bipartisan bill, and that may have a hearing before the Financial Services Subcommittee on currency. So I think there's going to be interest in it. I think Aaron's report has sort of generated new interest in it, especially because unlike the GAO study, it took in other considerations, and the savings, can be as high as $21 billion over 30 years. I think that's gotten people's attention. I also think that people kind of realize that we're one of the last industrialized nations to have a single denomination currency. And, at some point, the dollar is going to be worth a dime or a nickel, and it's just not going to make any sense to do it. So, the sooner we do it, the sooner we realize those savings. And I think that's what's getting people's attention. The other thing I'll say, too, is, we have a businessman who is now President of the United States, and he's going to look at this thing a lot differently. He's going to look at the dollar coins and the fact that the penny costs more than it's worth, and the nickel costs more than it's worth, and ask the questions, why would we do something like this? And we're going to be working very hard with the administration to get them to be supportive of what we're doing, and we think with their support behind us, we can actually make this a reality in Congress.
In the course of my job as editor of CoinWeek, I've run into numerous high-ranking Mint officials. I asked them the same question: has the Mint ever commissioned a study or looked into the possibility of reforming our coinage from a cost savings perspective, from the elimination, reformatting, and expansion of the circulating coin base in the United States, in order to test out, consider, and inform the Treasury or congressional leaders about the possibilities that may exist if they take on reform and authorize changes, which they have total power over? And the answer from each one of them was no. It seems to me, and I know the Mint is not a for-profit corporation, but to be the CEO of a major organization like that and not take steps to future-proof your product is troubling, and should be troubling to those who wish to see the continuance of the use of coins in the economy.
And I think they should do a study. I would say that part of it, and Aaron can talk to us since he worked on the Senate Banking Committee for years, I think they, over the years, have tended to take their lead on certain currency issues from Congress. And I think some of those requires congressional action and not a lot of latitude within the administration.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is per Shawn's point. It's very hard to get the attention of Congress on these issues unless you show kind of a clear reward for their action. And people, particularly in Congress, respond to incentives and have a lot on their radar screen. And part of my interest in doing this analysis on the cost savings from things like switching to the dollar coin or suspending production of the penny is to provide a better economic accounting for what happens in the real world, both in terms of saving taxpayers money and saving businesses money. And hopefully that will spur greater interest in action.
I would like to see the ultimate elimination of the 1 cent. I think it's well past due. One of the things that I have thought about is that if Congress would pass a law that would make all of the 1 cent coins that the Mint has made to this point, to the point of elimination, unlimited legal tender as they currently are, based on the Coinage Act of 1965. And for a number of years, while we transition away from the use of the 1 cent coin in commerce as a practical matter, in this interim period allow private minting of 1 cent type coins to be used as limited legal tender, like old store cards. This would allow private businesses to bear the cost of production of these 1 cent tokens, while the Mint does its job of removing pennies from circulation and ultimately eliminating their legal tender status and moving us to a 5 cent lowest denomination coin. But moving on to the elimination of the penny, or for that matter, the dollar bill. In order to do that, you would be running up against two very powerful and vested lobbying groups, those representing the zinc planchet producing interests for the cent and the Dalton, Massachusetts-based Crane Company, which produces the paper for the $1 Federal Reserve note. They would not go quietly.
You know, I think there's a certain moment where you want to advocate for, you know, at least on my end, what I think is the right policy. And if there are political compromises made to help individuals who are hurt by it, so be it. I was part of a legislative initiative about 14 years ago that was successfully allowed you to take pictures of your checks. This is basically, it's called check truncation, but it's why you can today deposit your check from your living room through your smartphone. It used to be illegal to take a picture of a check and present that for payment. Believe it or not, there was one company out of Ohio that made $1 billion a year flying checks around. That was their whole business model, was having small airplanes that flew checks. And, you know, this step forward was bad for their business, but ultimately the good of the many outweighed the one business model whose time had come and gone. Nobody, sometimes you have to make a choice. We can either have an inefficient system that burdens everybody a little amount, or we can move to a more efficient system, and whoever had the industry that was capitalizing on the inefficiency will have to look for their next entrepreneurial activity.
You know, I would also say that, you know, for the paper manufacturers or manufacturer, you know, we're not getting rid of the 5, the 10, the 20, or the 100, or the 50, or the 100. So they will have plenty of work with respect. It is a chunk out of there, but we're certainly they wouldn't be put out of business.
Yeah, Shawn's point is actually really important to realize that there have been notable, prominent folks who've called to suspend the $100 bill for national security and terrorist financing perspective, which in some ways is a bigger threat to the paper business model than the single dollar. And so in some ways now might be an opportune time because that constituency or interest group is focused on fighting on a different front as well.
So what feedback have you gotten from congressional members about your group's efforts?
So we've been on the Hill for several years now, and you know, you might get a staffer who doesn't like the concept of more coins, but once we show them that, you know, $1 coin can replace 4 quarters in your pocket, they seem to come around in that point. Again, there's very few people who actually oppose it unless they have skin in the game. You know, whether they represent the paper guys, or they represent the ink guys, or something along those lines. We find very little opposition. The challenge is, again, getting through that inertia. I like to tell a story. There was about 4 or 5 years ago, there was the effort to move towards digital TV signals, and Congress was scared to death that the country was going to come to Washington with torches and pitchforks and knives and stuff, and they went ahead and did it anyway, and they held their breath, and nothing happened. There was no issue. No one cared. And I think what you're going to get, a similar situation is, people will support this. We just did a poll and found out that when people understand the savings that are associated with going with a dollar coin, and that, again, that's the main reason you do it, the support is 70%. And with younger people, it's even higher. It's 76% in favor of doing it. So the support will be there. Congress just has to, again, get the courage to do it. And we hope that the administration will embrace this idea and encourage Congress to do it.
Do you have any idea of what percentage of golden dollar coins that the Mint has struck that remain in storage in government warehouses? And about how much of the total mintage is in circulation versus long-term storage?
I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, Aaron, but I did talk to somebody who's fairly knowledgeable about that issue because when they suspended the production a few years ago, at that time, I think it was something like 80%. Don't hold me to that, but it was definitely a clear supermajority, if you will, of coins were in circulation. And so the reason that's an issue is that because they're in circulation, that means the mint, the seniorage from a dollar coin is about 80 cents per coin. The mint's profitability dropped significantly after that. And so the amount of money they were reverting back to Treasury at the end of each year dropped significantly. So the amount that Treasury do to lower the debt dropped significantly. So that was it was a good soundbite at the time, but it didn't make any sense.
So I think it's a roughly $2 billion coins. This comes up in part because there are questions about how much the Mint could technically handle the capacity to ramp up to produce the billions of dollar coins needed. There are about $11 billion notes in circulation. So just at a 1-to-1 replacement ratio, you need to produce about $9 billion over 2 years, although we know, as a matter of fact, that coin replacement ratios are much higher, more on the order of 2-to-1 than 1-to-1. However, that's another reason why suspending production of the penny is a natural counterpart to ramping up production of the dollar coin and transitioning, because you free capacity to produce more of the dollar coins. But you'd have a pretty big ramp up in dollar coins over the first 5 years.
A question I've been dying to ask both of you since we started this conversation. Do you use dollar coins yourselves? And if so, when was the last time you used a dollar coin and for what purpose?
So I'll tell you, I have a 6-year-old daughter who who understands that the Tooth Fairy's preferred dollar instrument is the dollar coin. And I think we can all attest that if you were a 6-year-old, you'd rather find a dollar coin under your pillow than kind of an old crinkled note that who knows what substances have been on those notes, and the coins are actually a lot cleaner because the microbes on the coins. So it's actually a health benefit. So among my many uses for it include the Tooth Fairy, and if my 6-year-old is listening, it's the Tooth Fairy is the one who told me that.
And similar on my side, I actually there are a couple stores, a dry cleaner and other that are nearby that always seem to have dollar coins, and so I always ask for them, and I put my lesser change in a jar that I use to buy new golf clubs every 3 or 4 years when I fill it up enough. But I keep the dollar coins on my bureau and use them. But my favorite one is my youngest daughter, who's 14, just had a birthday party, and so at our house we did like a treasure hunt, and in the treasure hunt I put a little pot and I put 30 presidential dollar coins in there, and the kids went bananas because of course they thought it was real gold, but they loved it nonetheless. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, Aaron and Shawn, I appreciate you two taking the time to talk to me about your legislative efforts to keep coins circulating in the economy. We are at a unique juncture in time where in this century, more coins will be produced by the world mints and the United States Mint than at any other period in human history. Yet every day, the purchasing power of these coins gets ever more diminished. So thank you for undertaking the effort to preserve coins and to get the public and policymakers to rethink their usefulness.
Well, Charles, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
If you like this podcast, please share it with all your friends. Remember, every episode of the CoinWeek Podcast can be downloaded for free from the iTunes Store or streamed online on CoinWeek.com. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. Until next time, happy collecting.